So today we're going to talk about how to become an enterprise architect. And this is a role I absolutely like. I am joined here with Elonzo Coleman. Elonzo is a cloud architect. He is also our chief marketing officer, and he's an expert on marketing and branding. And not only helps our students learn architecture, but he teaches our students how to build the right brand, how to optimize their LinkedIn profile, and how to get people to come to you, to hire you as opposed to you trying to seek out others. So we will cover the entire enterprise architect role. Our team decided to offer you 35% off today as a bonus for attending this webinar. We know we haven't had an enterprise architect webinar for a little while, so we wanted to give you guys the best discount we possibly could. So we're going to do that today. Today, we will talk about enterprise architecture, but anytime you listen to a presenter, you really need to understand their background. You don't want to hear from someone that's never worked in tech before, someone that's trying to figure out their tech career, or someone that's a junior person that doesn't know what they don't know. You want to hear from people that have been there and have done it. So I'll tell you a little bit about me. I've been an IT architect now for over 25 years. It's the best job in the world, I got to tell you. I had come from internal medicine, and I've been an architect ever since. I absolutely love it. I was a lead enterprise architect at Cisco Systems. I was a principal 2 architect at Comcast. I was a principal architect at Riverstone Networks, which is now Nokia. And I was a lead architect at MCI WorldCom, which was the world's largest internet service provider at the time I worked there. They're now called Verizon. And in these last nearly 3 decades in technology, I've been considered an expert in enterprise architecture and digital transformation, network architecture, cloud architecture, and even security architecture. But here's the better news. I've spent more than 2 decades helping people just like you build your first technology career, get promoted, negotiate $100,000 plus raises. And that's what I do. I help people build their technology career. And I've helped many people throughout the world get all kinds of architecture jobs, regardless of their background and experience. So what are we going to talk about today? We will talk about what is an enterprise architect. We will then talk about what does an enterprise architect actually do. We will talk about why enterprise architecture, along with cloud architecture and AI architecture, are some of the best careers for 2024 and beyond. Then we'll talk about the absolute key skills to be an enterprise architect. And then we'll talk about certifications that we recommend to help boost your brand. And then we will talk about how we actually build the absolute best enterprise architects. And then we'll do 60, 90 to 90 minutes of group coaching. And at that point, you can ask any question you want. I encourage you to turn on your camera and ask questions. You know, I have 27 weeks of backed up consulting, where you one-on-one consultations. And even though my team charges $1,200 an hour, I'm booked up literally all day, every day for 27 weeks. And that's why I come online free. So don't be shy. Ask your questions. I want to help you build an awesome technology career that you love. So what is an enterprise architect? Well, an enterprise architect is not a programmer. They are not a cloud engineer. They are not a DevOps engineer, a network engineer, a Linux engineer. We're not engineers at all. We're hybrid technology professionals along with executives. That's the key to remember. We are predominantly an executive who is also a technology professional. We'll talk about what that actually means. And the enterprise architect role is one of the most strategic technology careers. And after being an enterprise architect for more than 25 years, or all kinds of architecture roles, I consider the enterprise architect to be the paramount of all architect positions. And it is, the enterprise architect could go by a lot of different names. Many companies that really understand architecture, like Cisco or IBM, talk about enterprise architects. Microsoft, you know, those types. In many companies, the enterprise architect is also called a chief architect, and there's plenty of $500,000 to $1 million chief architect positions. In other companies, the enterprise architect is considered the chief technology officer or the chief information officer. So this is an absolute executive role in every stretch of the imagination. And even when I was at Cisco 20 years ago, the enterprise architects 20 years ago were earning about $250,000 and they were considered director level people. So this is not a techie role. It's a great role, but we'll go over everything you need to know for this role. So why is the enterprise architect considered to be the most strategic of all the architect positions? Well, we have to look at today's world. If an organization has the best technology systems for their needs, they have the ultimate competitive advantage. But, and here's the big but, most technology projects are complete disasters. And the reason most technology architectures are a complete disasters is not because the technology doesn't work. Getting the tech to work is nothing. That's simple. But getting the tech to work in a manner that drives business performance, that's the secret. Over 70% of all cloud architectures and normal architectures are disasters. So businesses spend millions or hundreds of millions or billions of dollars on tech and they get nothing for it. Imagine if you spent $2 million on a car, but it didn't take you from point A to point B. You'd be pretty unhappy, right? But if you spent $1 billion on technology, and I've done a $1.1 billion technology design, and it gave you nothing in return, would you be happy? You'd be upset for good reason. And that is why the enterprise architect exists. We are the people that tie the organization's needs and goals to a technology solution that drives business performance. So that's called digital transformation. That's what we do. So what do we actually do? What goes into this? How do I design an enterprise architecture? How does David Lithicum design an enterprise architecture? And how do our enterprise architects do their job? Well, it really follows this flow. In order for us to design an architecture that optimizes our client's business performance, the first thing we need to know is what are the goals for the business? Where does that business want to be now? Where does that business want to be 6 months from now, 5 years from now, and 10 years from now? And I want you to all understand this. If you were going to fly an airplane, but you didn't know where you're going, you think it would be very successful. If you went to the airport and just jumped on a plane without knowing your destination, would it be successful? And that's why all enterprise architects start at the top, and we must learn the organization's goals. If we don't know where the organization's goals are, chances are we're designing an architecture that's a tech-driven architecture. It will hurt the business by taking valuable money out of the business and do nothing for them. Just like showing up at an airport, putting blindfolds on and walking onto an airplane and hoping that you get to Athens, Greece. You might get lucky. Of course, you could end in Vietnam. You could end in Cape Town, South Africa. You could end in the Cayman Islands. You could end up at one of my favorite places, like, say, Montego Bay, Jamaica. You could end up anywhere, but the chances of you getting to your destination without understanding the business is slim to none. So first thing we need to do is understand the client's business goals, because the technology needs to support those goals. The next thing that we need to understand is the organization's business processes. How does that organization work? So let's say you went to a hospital. How does a doctor actually do their job? How does a nurse actually do this job? Because if we don't understand how the organization works, there's a good chance that our architecture will fail. And I'll give you an example. So in the United States, the US government was very well-meaning, and they said all medical organizations must adopt electronic health records. Seemed like a no-brainer, right? The nurses used to place bets on the prescriptions that I would write and say, did Mike write for this or to this? The dosage is hard. Did he mean 5 milligrams or 50 milligrams? I can't see. His handwriting was bad. But so the US government was very well-meaning and said, yes, we need electronic health records. It's going to make a big difference, right? Well, I'll tell you, here's what happened. Here was the way a normal medical visit worked. I spent 12 minutes with my patients and 3 minutes asking the right questions. So if Chow walked in and she said, she said, Mike, my throat hurts. I'd say, Chow, tell me about your throat. What makes it better? What makes it worse? I'd say, Chow, can I examine you? And she'd say, of course you can, Mike. And I'd look in her ears, her nose, her throat. I'd feel her listen to her heart or lungs. I'd make a diagnosis, which was pharyngitis, and I'd write a prescription for amoxicillin 500 milligrams 4 times a day because Chow told me she's not allergic to penicillin. And I would spend 12 minutes on that exam, and then I'd write a SOAP note. SOAP note was this: patient presents today complaining of a sore throat. Objective: I noticed an erythematous red throat, red tongue, along with pustules. Diagnosis: pharyngitis. Plan: amoxicillin 500 milligrams 4 times a day. That's what it used to be. Now the tech comes in, and all of a sudden, doctors spend 12 minutes actually filling in the chart because it's so complicated to fill it out and it's not user friendly, and 3 minutes interviewing the patient. Well, prior to the tech, medical errors in the US were at 98,000. 98,000 people died of medical errors before electronic health records. Electronic health records come in, and medical errors are the third leading cause of death now in the US. Pretty terrifying, isn't it? And then medical errors went up 250%. And that's because the people that designed the tech didn't understand the business goals. So we have to understand the business process of how people work. So architect starts at the top. They learn the organization's business process. And then they ask the client, is that the way you want your business to operate in the future? And if the answer is yes, we keep the same business architecture. If the answer is no, we have to redesign the business architecture to make the business operate the way it should. Here's an example. I got a client that says, say they're an e-commerce retailer, and normally you go to that site and you pick out what you want. But maybe the client wants me to go to a website and get personalized recommendations for me that might cause me to buy more stuff. So that will demand a change in business processes, which means it needs a change in architecture. And that way, when I go to Amazon to go out there and buy my figs or my dates, it says, do you like apricots as well? Because I think you will, and it might make me buy more. So we need to understand the business goals, business vision. Then we need to understand the current business processes and figure out what the business wants to be in the future. Now, once we understand the organization's business processes, that's where the technical professional in us comes in. We need to examine the organization's technology, just like a doctor would examine a patient. What do they have? What's their network look like? What's their data center look like? What's their AI look like? What's their use of data look like? What's their security look like? We got to look at it all, because remember, we're the big picture architects. And then we have to evaluate, is that technology getting our client to the goal? And if it is, we're done. But in most cases, it will not get the client to their goals. And we have to design a technology to support the business goals and the business processes. Now, that involves looking at all the organization's technology. The next thing we need to do is we need to create a new design, a new architecture. So the enterprise architect is the king and the queen of the architects. They will then build a team of specialty architects: cloud architects, network architects, security architects, AI architects, data scientists, DevOps engineers, application architects, software developers, what have you. And together, this team of technology professionals is going to design the solution. Now, after we've designed the solution, we've got to go take this solution and go back to our client and go talk to the stakeholders. Now, why do we have to go talk to the stakeholders? Because what happens is these enterprises where we work have multiple business divisions. And something you do for one business division will help that bit part of the business, but hurt another part. So we've got to go to the stakeholders and make sure they agree on the architecture, make sure the architecture will work for the business, and we will retune that architecture as many times as necessary to get the architecture to support the business's goals. Now, what do we do next as architects? Well, we need to, especially as enterprise architects, we need to think about, do we have the technical capabilities for the architecture? Do we have the governance structure, the people that can oversee the architecture to make sure it's going to be successful? We have to create a statement of work, what's going to need to occur. And generally speaking, as an enterprise architect, we're going to need to build a team of people that will actually build it. Now, at that point, we also need to create a change management strategy to make sure when changes occur, they support the business goals and they don't harm the business. And for the most part, that's it. We don't touch the technology. We don't build the technology. And as soon as that architecture project's over, I promise you, if you work at a consulting company like an Accenture, Deloitte, KPMG, Capgemini, IBM, and to some degree an AWS, an Azure, a Google, a Cisco, a Microsoft, you will go to the next client. But if you're the enterprise architect that works for the end client, as soon as that architecture is done, you're off on a new architecture, because business is constantly changing, new technologies occur, and the companies will need us to design new solutions to power their business. So Why, to me, is this the absolute most exciting time for the cloud architect? Well, it really comes down to this. In recent years, there's been some very exciting developments in technology. I've been working with AI since 2001, but AI and its capabilities have gone up. Networking has got so fast over the last 25 years that you can have cloud computing 1,000 miles away and still get relatively good performance. And cloud providers offer some very good services for digital transformation when designed correctly. Although most cloud architectures are disasters too, because the people designing them don't understand business. And it's like, here's your tech, go figure out how to use it, as opposed to here's what you need. You wouldn't just give a patient a pill and say, I hope this is going to make you better. The doctor evaluates the patient, or the nurse practitioner evaluates the patient. They make a diagnosis and they learn what their goals are, and then they write a prescription. That's architecture. So all this new AI, all this new networking, all this cool cloud stuff, what does it do? It gives businesses an opportunity to be better. And who is that person that designs that solution, that marries all these cool and exciting technologies to a solution to business problems? That's the enterprise architect. And the more tech projects that fail, and 70% of them fail according to McKinsey, the more the need and the demand is for the enterprise architect. So hugely exciting time for the enterprise architect. Now, we have to understand that AI is probably the best thing that happened to the cloud architect, the AI architect, and the enterprise architect. And AI is probably the worst thing that could ever happen to a software developer or a dev or to a cloud engineer. And I'll explain to you the reason why. All these new technologies for the architect, it's like party time. Ooh, I got a new tool. Let me figure out how to use it to help my business. It's exciting. And every piece of new technology creates more jobs for architects because businesses want to benefit from the technology. Now, here's the good news. We're going to talk about the AI architect skills, but you heard me talk about discussing the business vision with the C-suite. You heard me talk about learning the organization's business processes. That's lots of conversations going back and forth. You heard me talk about creating an architecture team and leading an architecture team. You heard me talk about managing stakeholders and selling a vision and even selling the architecture to the client. You heard me talk about, or probably talk about, delivering presentations. Guess what? That is human to human work, which means AI cannot replace us. Now, if someone is a software developer, with Claude 3.5, I can program a video game in less than 3 minutes, and I don't even need to know how to code. So engineering, especially software development, is going to get hit pretty badly. And you can already see people like IBM getting rid of back-end programmers or software engineers, but never getting rid of customer-facing people or architects. Are investing more and more and more in them. So you can see a lot of that. So super exciting. AI creates more jobs for us, but it doesn't hurt us. So now we talked about what it is, what we do, why it's so strategic, and why we get paid so much. So let's talk about the real enterprise architect skills. It's a combination of business skills and system design skills. And of course, we teach 100% of the skills that you need to be an incredible enterprise architect at Go Cloud Careers. And that's why we've trained so many people that are working in every place you can imagine, from Apple to Amazon to Cisco to IBM to Google to Microsoft, to Accenture, Deloitte, KPMG, Capgemini, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Barclays Bank, JP Morgan Chase Bank, the US government, and many other organizations. So we'll start with the business skills. Now, this job, the enterprise architect, is 80 to 100% business and upwards of 20% tech. So this is a business executive job. So I'm going to start with the business skills. So because the enterprise architect is a strategy consultant, we're consulting to organizations on how to leverage technology to maximize their business performance and opportunities. You need consulting skills. The first skill you need is something called CXO relevancy, which is the ability to communicate to the C-suite in a manner that they understand and talk about things that they care about. The C-suite does not care about your Python script. But if you had someone that wrote a Python script that could automatically increase their sales by 4%, the CEO would care about the 4% increase in sales. They wouldn't care anything about the Python script other than saying, all right, tell me what I need to pay for this so I can get my 4% sales and I can build a business case around it. So you need that. Now, the next and really critical component to being an enterprise architect is business knowledge. Companies hire you to design a system to improve their business performance. If you don't know business, how are you going to actually improve their business performance? That would be like a doctor that doesn't understand medicine. They wouldn't be able to make you healthy if you were sick. So that enterprise architect needs to have a good, strong amount of business knowledge. And of course, we teach all of that. Now, architecture is a team sport. You know, my favorite proverb in the world comes out of Africa, and it says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Architecture is a team sport. You will get nowhere by yourself. So you're going to have to build and lead an architecture team. Now, this is going to be very critical. If Chow was this chief information officer that was my client, and I said, Chow, it's Mike Gibbs. I got 25 years experience and I designed your $1 billion solution, she'd laugh at me. No, if I said, hi, Chow, thank you for the opportunity to consult on your architecture. After our initial meetings, I want to let you know what I did. I built a team of 30 architects. The combined experience of this team is 750 years. And these architects have done $15 billion of architectures throughout their careers. We brought in expert network architects to make sure your network's going to work. Expert security architects to make sure your security is going to be top notch. We brought in AI architects and AI engineers and even data scientists to make sure you can maximize what you're getting out of AI. We also brought in some SysOps or maintenance people to make sure that our architecture is going to be easy to maintain for you. We brought some DevOps engineers to consult on how we can somewhat automate your solution, as well as a team of architects and business executives to make sure this is going to meet your needs. That is something our client wants, not because guess what? I'm smart. I built it for you. So keep that in the back of your mind. Now, the next thing that you will need is stakeholder management skills. Let's face it, an enterprise with 100,000 employees or 200,000 employees or 300,000 employees has more than one leader. And each leader cares about their organization, their team, and their goals. So you're going to have to go in there and schmooze with the stakeholders and get their needs, design solutions, and negotiate with them to make sure they'll support and adopt your solution. Stakeholders don't support the solution and say, I'm not using it. Company wasted a whole lot of money. So you need to have some very good stakeholder management skills. While we're talking about stakeholder management skills, you need good vendor management skills. I promise you, the real world is not like an AWS certification exam. It's not going to be just one vendor's technology at least 99.9% of the time. You're going to be dealing with multiple clouds in 98% of the time, multiple vendors. For example, you could be on the AWS cloud and using Palo Alto security systems and Cisco routers, for example, and data from, say, NetApp, and many, many other things. So please understand this is a team sport. You'll have to manage vendors as well as stakeholders. Now, here's the thing. If you design an architecture and the customer doesn't want to buy it or adopt it, you made beautiful PowerPoint slides, beautiful drawings, and wrote beautiful Word documents, but it goes nowhere. It dies. So you've got to be able to sell your vision to the client and get them to want to sign on the dotted line to actually purchase the architecture. Otherwise, there is no architecture. Plus, when you build a team, you need to sell to people why they should be on your team versus someone else's team. So you're going to need to learn how to sell. And of course, we teach this. You will also need very strong communication skills. No one's going to basically give you a piece of paper that says, build this. We don't build anything as architects. We just design it. And if you can't get the right information, your architecture will be a disaster. If a doctor didn't know how to ask the patients about the right questions, they can't come up with the right diagnosis. If an architect doesn't know what question to ask, their architecture will be a disaster, just like a doctor who doesn't know how to talk to the patients. So next, presentation skills. You know what you're going to do all the time as an architect, and it's the greatest thing. It's the easiest thing in the world. People pay you to give presentations, and we give constant presentations. They'll be flying you to San Jose to give a presentation. They'll be flying you to London to give a presentation. They'll be flying you to Dubai to give a presentation. Of course, you do plenty of them online, like on Zoom or Teams or WebEx or something like that. So presentation skills, and of course, we teach them. And you have to have something called executive presence. Watch. Hi, everybody. I'm Mike Gibbs. I'm an architect. Are you going to buy my $1 billion solution like that? Absolutely not. But if I've got some executive presence and I've had about $20,000 of executive presence training, you can feel me when I talk. So of course we train our clients on executive presence because you're going to need it for the job. And talk about something that'll add a $50,000 to $100,000 more to your salary. It's your executive presence. Next thing is emotional intelligence. Understand that when you go see your clients, 70% of the time they've had an architectural disaster. 70% of the time. And, if Alonzo designed something that didn't work, and Alonzo's designs are awesome, but if he was a CIO and his team designed systems that didn't work, and I go in there, he's going to be a little upset and embarrassed. So I'm going to have to go in there and talk to Alonzo with a soft touch, get him to open up about what's happened, get the information I need to help design the right solution. So please keep this in the back of your mind. And negotiation skills. Let's face it, life is a series of negotiations. And you honestly need to be able to negotiate business deals, and you'll be doing it all the time. But you might want to negotiate a higher salary. Just yesterday, we had a student that had come to us. He had gone on an interview. He had a $110,000 job. By the time we were done teaching him how to negotiate it, he got $175,000 as his next base, along with a 30% bonus and $55,000 of stock options each year, way above what he would have done without our negotiation training. So understand those are the business skills. Now let's talk about the technical skills. Remember, as enterprise architects, we do not touch the technology. I'm going to say it again. As enterprise architects, we do not touch the technology. We don't code. We don't configure. That's all done by somebody else. But for us and for any architect, because no architect touches the technology, we need a strong understanding of how the technology works. And knowing how the technology works is very different than knowing how to configure the technology. How many of you drive a car? I drive a car, right? I've like this nice, comfortable SUV that feels good on my back. I don't know how that engine works. I don't know how diesel fuel is injected or whatever it does and how it occurs. Because my Mercedes is diesel. I have no idea. I have no idea how the AC system in my car works, but I've got lots of hands-on experience driving that car. I like the car. It's a great car. Hopefully I'll keep it for a while. I like to buy cars and keep them for a long time. They're not a good investment. They depreciate. So I like to buy quality stuff and keep it. But that's the thing. So you're going to have to learn how the technology works, not how to use it. This means understanding how to meet the organization's performance needs, their security needs, and their availability needs. So you will need network design skills for anything. If the network doesn't work, nothing works. Kind of like if you don't have power. So you need network design skills. So we will teach you that. In today's world, let's face it, everything is on some form of a cloud. And it could be a private cloud like a Nutanix cloud or an OpenStack cloud or a VMware cloud. It could be a hybrid cloud, which is very common because it provides the best performance and the lowest costs, where you keep your data center and then you connect to, say, an Azure or an AWS or a Google or an Oracle or anybody else's cloud. It could be a multi-cloud environment, and that could be AWS, Azure, and Google all together. Or most likely, it's going to be a hybrid cloud where organizations put their high-performance systems in the data center for the best performance and the lowest cost and the most control, and then they connect to 2 or more clouds. 98% of organizations have more than one cloud, which means, what you're taught in a cloud certification, we got to strip that back and teach you how to make it in the real world. So there's that. You will also need data center design skills because you will be designing lots of private clouds. You will need to learn that. You will need artificial intelligence design skills because let's face it, for the most part, I haven't done any architecture since 2000 where some form of artificial intelligence wasn't involved. But now the AI models, the GPUs, the TPUs, even to some degree the CPUs and the FPGAs and the ASICs can process things so much faster, and keep that in the back of your mind. And that's why AI is becoming more and more important. So let's talk about our training for a minute. Enterprise architecture careers are not about certifications. They're about learning how to design systems to optimize business performance. So certifications are about the name of a service and how to configure that service. So should you get certifications? The answer is still yes. And I'll explain to you why. Certifications will help you get an interview. And what we teach you is going to teach you to go from that interview to the being hired. So we provide training on the Azure Solutions Architect Expert and the AWS Solutions Architect Professional. We provide training on TOGAF 10, which is an enterprise architect certification. And we will give you the training that you need to be great. So how do we do our training? Well, our training is a combination of live training, on-demand training, architectural projects, and the such. So we have 3 live training sessions per week on Zoom. And in these sessions, you'll be designing architectures for all sorts of business problems. We also have 1 to 2 days a week of office hours, where when you're part of this program, you can come in on an additional day and ask any question you want to the program from our staff. In between the training, there'll be videos for you to do, architectures for you to do, case studies for you to do, presentations for you to do. And guess what? Many of those you'll turn in and my team will give you feedback on. You will work with others on your system designs. We will break you up in architecture teams like the real world. You will design architectures based upon the projects and the case studies we give you, just like a real enterprise architect. You will document the architecture and you will present it back and sell it to us just like a real architect would do. Now, most enterprise architects don't really know a lot about technology. And honestly, that's the biggest weakness in enterprise architects is they're minimally knowledgeable on technology. And most of them are just MBA types. Not that you need an MBA, but the type of business acumen, leadership, etc. So here's what we do to make sure you get the tech and the business, because I want you to be the best architects no matter what. Our enterprise architects attend our Cloud Architect Career Development Program, because pretty much everything is going to be on some form of a multi-cloud environment, a hybrid multi-cloud. And then we have additional enterprise architecture classes where we work through enterprise architecture processes, we work on business skills and enterprise architecture things. So for example, right now I have my students doing a project where they design a business. They've all been given a budget. They're all designing the business architecture for that business, the way they want the business to occur. They'll then be designing the enterprise architecture, both the business processes and the technical solution. They'll be presenting it back to us and selling it to us just like a real architecture and document it. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind. And then after that, what you will do is, you'll do a series of projects. We will teach you how to design your resume. We will teach you how to interview. We'll teach you how to get an interview and even how to negotiate a higher salary. So come build a career that you love. I strongly recommend you take our enterprise architecture program if that's something you're interested in, and take advantage of the 35% off special. And at this point, I will open it up for questions. Feel free to come off mute. Let's have a conversation. We enterprise architects have conversations every day, and I want to help you. If you're shy, and you can't really be a shy architect, but if you're a little shy, we'll teach you how to not be shy. Look at me. I'm a shy introvert. I really am, but I've learned how to be otherwise. Put your question in the chat box and we'll keep you there.
All right, Mike. Well, we're ready to go with our first few questions. And the first one is from Karthikeyan, and he's asking, hello, Mike and Shao. I have a question about how to learn multiple tools or multiple technologies in a possible and more efficient way, please.
Okay, and that's a great question. So most of what you need to understand is you need real fundamentals. And I'll give you the difference between fundamentals. So let's say I have someone that passed the AWS Solutions Architect Professional. I've interviewed 1,000 AWS certified people, and I asked them, explain to me how an EC2 instance works. Explain to me the hypervisor. Explain to me how the hypervisor manages the memory, the CPU. Explain to me this. And none of them could answer it. And here's the reason why. There is no teaching about the technology in the AWS Solutions Architect Professional. It is an administration certification. Here's the name of a service, and here's how to configure it. So it's kind of like getting certified in driving a Toyota, where Toyota called this is the elastic rotational vector directional changer, call it a steering wheel instead. And this is the potentiometer to accelerate an electric car instead of calling it the accelerator. So the certification is a bunch of fuzzy names and, try to obfuscate, tell you what the technology is. But if you learn the technology, what if I told you that every technology on the cloud I actually worked with 25 years ago? Want to know where the hypervisor came out? That enabled, what do you call it? That enabled the AWS EC2 instance, the Azure virtual machine, the Oracle virtual machine, and the Google Compute Engine instance. VMware created it in 1999. Same piece of technology. When was the first time I worked with block storage, object storage, and file storage? 25 years ago. And if you truly understand object storage, it doesn't matter whether you buy it from Dell EMC, you're using it on AWS in the form of S3, you're using it in Google in the form of cloud storage, or Microsoft in the terms of blobs. It's the same old technology. AWS had a really exciting product announcement. You can run IPsec over a direct connection. Now, to people that didn't have fundamentals, this was exciting. You should have seen all the solutions architects or solution architect wannabes on LinkedIn talk about it. But they didn't know that it's in 1998 at Cisco, we put IPsec over private lines, and it was the same thing. So if you learn the technology and how the technology works and how to design the technology, it'll be easy because the tech is really the same. Very few things have changed. You know, the service-oriented architecture of 2005 is not that much different than today's microservices architectures. They're very similar. So get good, strong fundamentals, and we will teach you that. Otherwise, you're going to be in a constant catch-up state, and it's going to be very challenging. And the problem is where people do labs and projects, here's the problem. They learn how to build, but they don't learn how the tech works and how to design. And for any of you that are AWS certified out there, or to put it into context, okay, you set up a virtual machine. So tell me about that processor. Tell me about that processor on that EC2 instances, the number of cores. Tell me about the frequency of those cores. Tell me how the level 1, level 2, and level 3 cache affects that core, the performance on that CPU. Tell me about the PCI bus on that CPU that's going to plug into that motherboard and how that would affect the number of GPUs that could be in that system and the GPU performance. That knowledge. And when you learn that, you'll be able to do anything, but you can't learn it by doing. You have to be taught. You have to be taught how to fly an airplane. You can't just like try to trial and error learn how to fly an airplane, because when that plane crashes, you know, bad things happen. You can't trial and error learning how to be a doctor, because if I tried to experiment on child's health and I caused her to die, you know, her family would be very unhappy with me, and child's the greatest, so I would be unhappy with me too. So you get the point. And nobody's going to, you have to be taught how to put an architecture together. So I hope that actually helps.
Our next question is from Vish. Any suggestions, Mike, for being an architect for on-prem to cloud migrations in a specific domain like healthcare?
Yeah. So can you come off mute? Because that is a question I'd like to dive deeper in. And I can tell you a lot about healthcare because I used to practice internal medicine, and I was Cisco's chief healthcare architect. So, and if you can't, let's talk about what it's going to take. So you want to migrate something. What are the challenges that the organization has? If an organization's in its data center and it's working great, why are you going to the cloud? The cloud's not going to be cheaper. On average, it's 250% the cost of the data center. The cloud offers agility and speed, which is awesome. But why are you going to the cloud? Now, if you migrate to the cloud, should you put it all in one cloud? You pop your systems in one cloud, and that cloud provider has a network failure, a hacking event, or a control plane failure, and that whole cloud is dead. And it doesn't matter how many availability zones and regions you use. So for healthcare, a single cloud is pretty much dangerous or too dangerous to work, because when the systems go down, people die. What's driving that transformation? Does that organization want to use some form of AI with the radiologist to help the radiologist read things quicker and make less mistakes? If so, where's your data? What's your source of data? How clean is your data? What do you need to do hygiene-wise on your data? And then what are the best technologies and tools that are going to help your radiologist read things? So you need to understand this. The actual planning of the migration is nothing, but you need to know what you're doing. And if you want to come off mute, I would give you a lot more depth into your answer because I really want to help you. But I don't exactly completely know what question you're at. But, you know, it's going to take you to plan a migration to the cloud, a team of 15 to 50 people, and it's going to take 6 to 12 months. because you're going to have to deal with the clinical people, the chief nursing officer, the chief medical informatics officer. You're going to be dealing with the organization's potential data scientist. You're going to be dealing with their clinical systems, their lab systems, their pharmacy systems, their electronic health records. You're going to have to be dealing with security. You're going to have to be thinking about where your systems are stored. You're going to have to deal with HIPAA and otherwise regulations. So that's part of your plan, which is why I asked if you could come off mute. But if not, I hope I answered your question. If not, please come off mute.
Okay, Mike, until they're able to, we'll go on to the next question. And it's also
Okay.
from, is there a checklist with all that will be taught in a timeline for a list of things regarding the development program?
So sure, you can go on our website and look at all the things that are there. But here's the thing, we also add a lot. For example, I just filmed an additional 105 new architecture videos 2 weeks ago that are being edited and adding to the program because we constantly add technologies, we constantly add videos as the world changes, and we constantly update this program. Now, timeline, you stay in this program until you are hired. I'm going to say this again. You stay in the program until you are hired. Why is this important to me? Because I want to know that all of you get an architect job at the end of this program. And if you don't quit on you and you stay in our program, you should be hired. And we've trained lots of people, and there's no background on your background. I'll give you many examples because I saw somebody asked a question about that. So keep that in the back of your mind. And you will do more architecture projects and more architectural case studies and more architectural presentations that by the time you're done with us, you will have no problem getting a job. I don't care if you're Jermaine Houston, who is selling landscaping gear, who left our program as an enterprise architect. I don't care if you're Wallace Agana, who was a sales rep that left our program as an enterprise architect at JP Morgan Chase. It doesn't matter. Or you could be someone with tech experience like Pritapal Sejan, who left our program working as an enterprise architect, or Angelo, who took our program and left our program as an enterprise architect, but he did have a tech background. It doesn't matter. If you've got a background in engineering and now you want to be an architect, it's like you used to be a nurse and now you want to be a doctor. It's a different job. They're completely different, and you still need to be trained. So everybody's a newbie when it comes to architecture, whether you have engineering background, whether you don't, because it's a new job. But guess what? It's the best job in the world, and it pays more money than you can imagine. And you'll love it. I can pretty much guarantee that. Unless you want to be the hands-on techie. No, then you'll probably like being an engineer much more.
Next question is from Lalo. I hear that the certification will land you an interview and recognition. What about before the certification? When you are trained and having projects that you built without a certification, how would you stand a chance in the interview?
You just actually asked the most critical question. Can you repeat that question? You've done projects. How do you stand a chance? So it depends on what the project is. So here's the biggest mistake architects do. They do engineering projects. They build stuff. Architects don't build anything. Now, I wish this wasn't the case, but the people that actually build the buildings, the construction workers, don't get asked to design the buildings. Never. Never. The architect goes to school and learns architecture. The construction workers and engineers learn engineering. So you will have to do architectures. Now, I can tell you right now, I've gotten plenty of architects hired with no background because they're competent. And I've gotten plenty of architects hired with zero experience. Here's an example. Arun, I always mess up his last name. Arun, I'm just going to call him Arun S. He was working at Home Depot, not in a tech job. After our training, he got his first job at TELUS as a solutions architect. Ivan Tamba, love this kid. He was 24 years old. He was a waiter when he came to us. Highly motivated. I remember he came into the first class with this Georgia Tech shirt on and said, "Hi, I'm Ivan. I want to introduce myself." And, 6 months later, he was working at AWS as a solutions architect. His best friend, Jordan Katil, came from Cameroon just like he did to the US, hired by AWS. And both of those two have been promoted, and neither one of them worked in tech. They were both college students. Coyote at the same time was hired by AWS, and he again was another college student. Richard Ferrari was working in the fraud department of a bank, not a tech job, but in the bank. He got hired after our training at MUFG as a solutions architect. Jeffrey West was doing some kind of geology. It was something cool, but it was a scientist, but it wasn't tech. By the time he was done with us, he worked at Caliant as a solution architect. Lenny Burnett was our video editor. awesome video editor, a great videographer. He loves video like I do, loves photography like I do. Left our program as a solution architect at Arrow Electronics, which is part of Citrix. Delray Batt was an emergency medical technician working on ambulances. Left our program as an architect at CDW. Daniel Bosu didn't even graduate high school, but JP Morgan Chase sure sucked him up as a solutions architect after our training. And of course, again, it was his first tech job. He was 20 years old. Balwinder Kerr was a stay-at-home mom at Microsoft, or stay-at-home mom, but she worked at Microsoft after the fact. Noah Parker was a social worker before we got hired ahead as a solution architect. Al Legister took about Atlanta people, and Jordan Katil, and as well as what's his name, Yvonne Tamba, both lived in Georgia as well. But Al Legister got hired as a senior solution architect at Deloitte after our training, and it was his first tech job. He'd come from sales. Pierre Dassault was working on sailboats, but he left our training getting hired by Lease Web in Canada as a solution architect. And I give you many, many, many more examples. The key is when you have the right training, you're hired. I will tell you that if I interview 1,000 AWS certified people, chances are I can't hire any, and I've tried it. And if I interview 1,000 regular people, I can't hire because I can find 1,000,001 people that know how to configure. That's nothing. But you can build all the hands-on projects you want. And then when I ask you, the organization's weighted average cost of capital is 6.725%. How would you weigh that information to determine if you should build a private cloud or use a public cloud from a perspective of cost? You won't know it. Now, what if I said to you, I need you to design a solution that's going to increase the revenue for an e-commerce-based client? You're going to do that as an enterprise architect, but I promise you, you'll learn it by doing architectural case studies, not by setting up a WordPress website. It's irrelevant to what we actually do. Now, we need to understand how the technologies, but this is very important to me. So I want you to think about that into context. If I told you that a hospital has too many medical errors and you want to stop that, what can you do as a healthcare architect to design that? Which means you need to know healthcare and what we do and the challenges we have to design it. And that's why architecture is not engineering. And that's why so many people do project, and they go on an interview and fail because they're training for someone else's job. It's like going to nursing school and saying, I want to be hired to be a doctor. Well, guess what? Even if you've been a nurse for 20 years, the only way you're going to practice medicine is if you go to school to be a nurse practitioner, a physician assistant, or a physician. Nobody's going to allow a nurse to write a prescription. I hope that makes sense. Please ask more questions on that because it's a very important concept. And it's what kills everybody's architecture careers, learning the wrong person's job.
Very true, Mike. The next question again is back to Vish. What is the difference between a cloud architect versus an enterprise architect that you offer?
Great question. So a cloud architect is 50 to 80% business and 20 to 50% tech. The enterprise architect is 80 to 100% business. So let me actually draw it out for you because I think this is a great question. And maybe this will explain it to you. I really want to help. So I'm going to take out my favorite tool as an architect, which is PowerPoint. If you want to find a true architect, they use PowerPoint nearly every day. And the other thing that they use is a whole lot of Microsoft Excel. So let me go take this. So here I am as an architect. So let's look at a typical org chart. Up here, you have the CEO. The CEO sets the vision, the strategy. Now, the CEO typically has a couple of people that work for them. They have a chief financial officer who manages the money. They are going to have a chief operating officer that makes sure the business actually runs and that the CEO's ideas actually can come to fruition. You're going to have a chief information officer, and the chief information officer is the C-suite executive that's responsible for making sure the organization's technology works. You'll have a chief marketing officer, but I think you get the point. Now, in some organizations, this CIO is actually an enterprise architect. It depends on the size of the organization. In other organizations, what you'll typically see is you'll have an enterprise architect over here. And the enterprise architect will be directly reporting to the chief information officer. And let me see, I'm not sure if I potentially made a spelling error. So the enterprise architect is the head. Now, the enterprise architect will typically have a cloud architect working for them that focuses on the multi-cloud architecture. They'll typically have a network architect that's going to focus on the networking. They will typically have some security architects that are focused on the organization's security. They will typically have some AI architects. And they will have a bunch of other people. So what'll happen is the CEO says, we've got a goal. We need to improve the productivity of our team. The CEO then goes to the CIO and says, find a way to make our engineers 30% more productive. Then that CIO and the enterprise architect have that conversation. And in most cases, the CEO, CIO, and enterprise architect have that conversation. Then that enterprise architect goes to their teams and says, okay, I need all of you to work together with me on this. This is probably going to go to the cloud. So cloud architects that we have on this team, please figure out a multi-cloud strategy. It's a hospital. If we go to a single cloud and that single cloud fails, people die. We can't afford that liability. Okay, work on your multi-cloud architecture. Okay, you network architects, I need to make this multi-cloud architecture work, and I need 99.999% availability. You go work with those cloud architects to make it happen. Security architects, we can't let our private healthcare information get taken, and if the systems are hacked, we go down, which means people die. I need you to focus on that. Ooh, AI architects, what can you guys do to either enable our engineers so we need less engineers, or engineers can do more? What can you do to support the doctors, nurses, or what have you? And that's the way it's going to work. So the enterprise architect is at a level above the cloud architect. To keep that in the back of your mind.
Hey, Mike, next question. Back to Karthikeyan. Also, please shed some light on how to learn cloud migration from end-to-end hands-on experience.
You will never learn cloud migration from end-to-end hands-on experience. You will learn cloud migration by being taught how to do a cloud migration. That's the secret. So I want to let you know so what does it mean when someone says, come back when you have more experience on an interview? Elonzo's a rock star. He is awesome. But if I interviewed Elonzo and I asked him, how would you, let me give him a basic architecture question. Elonzo, I've got some sales reps, and you don't need to answer this, but I need you to figure out how to make the sales reps better. How can you improve the knowledge of their customers and the client's needs with various technologies? How can you go out there and help that sales rep prospect for the right clients? How can you give that sales rep the tools they need? And I ask him that on a question, and that's an architecture question. And I promise you, you can do the Google Professional Cloud Architect. You'll learn zero about architecture. You'll do the Azure Solutions Architect Expert and learn zero about architecture. You'll do the AWS Solutions Architect Professional and learn zero about architecture. If you can't answer that, I'm going to say, come back to me when you have more experience. If you can answer that, I'm going to hire him. Now, keep this in the back of your mind. If I interviewed you, it's because I'm willing to hire you. What you do on that interview will determine if you get there. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind.
From Lori, I am currently studying for the Network Plus. Will this help me once I enroll in the AES CAA certification course?
Okay, so if I can give you a piece of advice, there's 3 certifications that I recommend you never do. The CompTIA A+, the CompTIA Net Plus, and the CompTIA Linux Plus. And here's the reason why. These certifications are fine. But, and here's the but, the hiring managers don't care about them. So when a hiring manager sees an A+, Net Plus, and a Security Plus, they say, if I hire that person and give them a year of training, they might be able to work. But why would you hire someone that doesn't have the training? So I don't recommend it. I recommend you learn the skills for your job. But here's what I would do instead. If you're insistent on just getting these entry-level fundamentals, get rid of the Net Plus and swap it for the CCNA, the Cisco Certified Network Associate, because that will give you some skills to do some network administration. Swap the A+ and go out there and build a computer. Go out there and buy a CPU and buy a motherboard and buy your DRAM and buy your hard drives and buy your power supplies and buy your case and go build that computer, because that's the mainest thing in the A plus. Now, when you build that computer, I want you to think about what you're going to do, how many CPU cores you're going to need, etc. And when you build this computer, I want you to pack it with RAM. And when you're done with the RAM in this computer, I want you to put a hypervisor on it, say like VMware ESXi. Then I want you to go build the cloud on this hypervisor, build some virtual machines, build some Windows machines, some Linux machines, some servers, try to hack into those servers, build an Active Directory server, actually learn something. And then when you're done that, instead of the Linux Plus, get the Red Hat certified engineer. And if you do all those three, you will have the skills for an entry-level job, not an architect job. And when I see that, I might bring you in on a resume. But sadly, me and every other hiring manager I know, we do not ever even interview people with an A plus, Net plus, or Security plus. And the only time we ever might would be for a help desk position or working at Best Buy. Best Buy loves to hire those A plus, Net plus, Linux plus people for their Geek Squad. But if you're looking for a real job, which is going to give you a lot of performance, it's not going to get you there. And it's not that it's not a real job at Best Buy. It is a real job. But I hate to see you waste a year of your time to get a $30,000 or $40,000 job when you can spend a year of your time and get a $200,000 architect job. So what's your actual goals, where you want to be? If you tell me where your goals are, I can tell you what to do. But generally speaking, it's not worth doing the A plus, Net plus, and Security plus. And worse is sometimes if it sits on your resume. So let's say I've got a physician. Would a physician put on their resume that they can type? No. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind. You have to have something to offer. And you don't want to put down these things. So many times I've got people with a bunch of CompTIA certifications and like these developer associate, DevOps associate, and SysOps associate. Arun was one of them. He had all this stuff on his resume and nobody took him seriously. I pulled it off his resume and guess what? Multiple offers because he had the skills.
From Taufeeq, what's the cost of the training?
So the cost of the training with the 35% discount that we're offering right now is $1949 for a single payment, $714 per month for 3 monthly payments, and $389.35 for 6 monthly payments. The average architect earns about $1,000 a day in the US, to put it into context. So that's about 2 days pay for our average tuition. And the average architect earns about as much as a physician or lawyer, but we don't have to take on the 7 years of school and $300,000 to $500,000 of debt. Great question.
From Paramassivan, are there any prerequisites for the Enterprise Architect program? I come from a non-technical background with 1 year of experience as a data analyst and 12 years of experience in sales and marketing.
Okay, so you actually have an incredible background for enterprise architecture.
Yeah, you do.
It doesn't matter your background. I have no prerequisites, and I must start you at ground zero. Let's say you've spent the last 25 years as a software developer. You know how to code, right? Now, when I ask you, how do you design an organization's demilitarized zone for a web application? You won't know. I promise you, you won't. If you're a software developer and I ask you, how do you create a 5 nines available system? I guarantee you won't know because it's not your job. So the key is we start everyone from the beginning. Now, I will tell you that people that come from a sales background are the easiest people to get hired because so much of what we do is related to sales. So I'll give you examples. So I had Nafumi. He was from Cameroon. This guy was a rock star. He'd been an engineer for about 20 years. He was in our program for about a year and he became an architect. Harsha was in our program. He was a cloud engineer for over 10 years, and it took about a year to get him hired as a cloud architect. Pritipal St. John, 20 years experience, took us about a year to get him hired as an enterprise architect. But let's talk about the exact opposite. So Debbie Griffin did not have a tech background. She was with us for 6 months before she got hired as an architect. I mentioned Al Legister because his background was sales. He got hired as a senior solution architect as his first job at Deloitte. It did take him 12 months to do it, which is the same amount of time as an engineer. Wallace Agana from Ghana actually took about 9 months in our training to get hired as an architect. Was it Gladys, who was a PM, who we trained, and it was about 9 months, Gladys Williams, before her first cloud architect job? I'm pretty sure it was Gladys Williams that was there. Or it was Jennifer Emo, who was a mental health tech who got hired by JP Morgan Chase as a solutions architect after our training. We can't give you prerequisites because it's going to take about as much time to go from engineering to become an architect as it would to go from a nurse to be an architect, a physician to become an architect, a lawyer to become an architect, or an accountant. Because in either case, it's a business job. So the more business background you have, the better your presentation skills, your communication skills, the greater your levels of emotional intelligence, the faster you get hired. It's one of the reasons I love working with healthcare people. Because in healthcare, we're taught, that's my wife likes to call it, therapeutic communication. Well, that's how to communicate and get information from people in an open-minded and non-judgmental. I call it emotional intelligence, but you'll be fine. That's why we have no prerequisites. No matter where you're at, we'll get you what you need. And you'll stay in the program until you are hired. And that's the key. We are not a boot camp. I don't sell training and not care about results. Elonzo cares about your results. Elonzo and I have our happy dance, and I've got a bad foot, so we do it on one foot. But when we get people hired, you can see it, and we love it.
From Taufeeq, what's the job prospects for those migrating to get a job as an enterprise or cloud architect?
What do you mean migrating to get a job? Meaning leaving the country to go to another country?
That
So,
is, I want to say based off of the actual, I won't assume, but I guess they're transitioning out of one job to another.
so the chances are, as long as you do the work, you should get there. You have a year in our live training included, and you've got unlimited time in our communications platform. And even after the year, every new class we teach, we pop it into your portal. So your program is there and you stay it until you're hired. So what are the chances that you do the work? That's going to determine whether you get hired. Now, if it gets a little hard, and sometimes every training gets hard, if you quit, you won't be successful. But if you stick it out and you keep at it until you're hired, we will keep you in until you're hired. And that's why you will get hired.
From Gianluca, what is the best way to learn about the technologies independent from the cloud providers? For example, object storage in general instead of S3, VM virtualization instead of EC2, and so on.
Well, you can either take training from someone like us, and we will teach you, or for internet things, you can read all of the Internet Engineering Task Force specifications. Like if you want to learn BGP, read the RFC. You want to learn OSPF, read the RFC. And every vendor in the entire world has to stand, for the most part, support the specification. Guess what? How do you learn about storage area networks? Well, the good news, there's lots of people that make them. IBM makes it, Dell EMC makes it, so learn that technology. Read these specifications from the IEEE on Ethernet and things like that. Read the people that actually make the tech. Now, if you were to read a Cisco book, say Routing TCP IP from Jeff Doyle, or Internet Routing Architecture from Bassam Halabi, they are designed for architects. So they will teach you the underlying technology and how it works. And guess what? That technology works the same on AWS, Azure, Google, Cisco, IBM, Alibaba, because it's the same networking stuff. So that's how you learn it. So, for example, you have to get the underlying components. And in a vendor certification, generally speaking, they don't teach it to you. They're teaching you the name of their services and how to configure it. So that's why there's a glut of AWS certified people, Google certified people, and Azure certified people that aren't hireable as an architect. And they won't be, because they learned the name of a service and how to configure that. But if they learn and they're properly trained, it's so easy to get an architect job. I mean, companies are begging for them, and they don't have anybody that can do it.
From Stephen, on the same topic of hybrid cloud and on-prem, can you describe how one can deploy multiple cloud platforms to design a solution for, say, a healthcare domain with respect to more than one cloud provider, such as Google Cloud Platform, AWS, and more?
Yeah, and that's what we teach in our 800-hour enterprise architect program. It's not something I can answer in 5 minutes. But what are you dealing with? You're dealing with an electronic health record, right? An electronic health record needs to go to a server. You can cluster your servers because you've got IP connectivity in AWS, Azure, Google, and your data center all at the same time, assuming your networking is right. You need a database, a relational database. Guess what? You can't use an Amazon Aurora because it won't work in multiple clouds, but you can use MySQL, you can use Postgres, you can use MariaDB, you can use Microsoft SQL or Oracle's relational database and stick that in all four data centers. And as long as you've got IP connectivity, it'll work. How about security systems, right? We're not going to use the cloud providers' native tools because they're not going to be good enough for healthcare needs or enterprise needs in most cases. But we can go to Palo Alto or Cisco or Checkpoint or Fortinet and buy their next generation firewalls and put them in any of our clouds or any of our data centers. So it's using open standard tools. For example, it's no different than when I used to go around on patients in multiple hospitals. I didn't do the different job whether I was at a Catholic Health East hospital or versus what if I would say at a Tenon hospital. They're two different ownerships, but if I had a patient that had an infection and levofloxacin was the right prescription, guess what? I wrote that same levofloxacin prescription in any hospital I went to because it was the right drug. If I had a patient that had heart failure that needed a beta blocker, ACE inhibitor, and a loop diuretic, I chose the same beta blocker, ACE inhibitor, and loop diuretic in all three hospitals because it's the same thing. When you peel back the onion, it's the same thing. So I would ask you this: how do you drive a car? If I leave my Mercedes and get into my wife's Toyota, I still push a button to start the car. It's got the same steering wheel. It's got the same accelerator. It's got the same brakes. Got wheels on it. I drive it. So you learn the underlying technology, then you'll be good.
The next question is from Taufik. I have a certification in Azure Solution Architect and Google Cloud Architect, but no job wants to guarantee that I will get the job. But what's the guarantee that I will get a job with this training?
Can you come off mute? Because this is a very important concept. And I'll show you why, because I want to show you why those certifications can't get you hired.
Yep.
And then I'll show you the difference. Raise your hand if you can come off mute.
Okay. Well, could you illustrate for us, Mike, if they're not
Sure.
able to make?
Okay. So I've got a company and they have a private cloud. I'd like you to answer this question. The organization needs to know that if they lose a router, a switch, or a cable, that within 40 milliseconds, the application will still be up and running. How would you design that? The next question I would ask you is, how would you design a remote access system for an organization that has 500,000 remote access employees but needs, military grade security? The organization's weighted average cost of capital is 7.27%. How would you compare that and the financing costs related to build an OpenStack cloud or a Nutanix cloud versus the AWS or Azure cloud? If you can answer that right now for me, you will be hired. But if you can't, I can't hire you, no matter how many certifications you have. So what you did is you took training in the name of a service and how to configure that. And it has absolutely zero to do with the job. So you are not going to get hired with a certification. And you can look at our videos for the last 5 years where we talked about why those certifications alone will never get you hired. So basically what you're saying is, I learned how to drive a car. Why can't somebody hire me to be an airplane pilot? Because you need the skills. Now, I cannot guarantee that you take our program and do the work. I can't do it. And that's why Harvard, Oxford, Yale, Penn, Stanford, Cambridge cannot offer a guarantee on their students, because I can't guarantee that you're going to come to class and I can't guarantee that you're going to do the work. But I can say this: if you stay in our program and don't quit, we won't quit on you, and you will stay in the program until you're hired. And I've gotten more people architect jobs at more places than you could possibly think. So I can't force you to do the work. And that's the theme to remember. But I can promise you that no certification will get you a cloud architect job for the reasons we described. And if you wanted to come off mute, I could ask you architecture questions and show that. Elonzo, you're muted.
Sorry about that, Mike. From
It's okay.
What is the duration of the training to become a full enterprise architect, and can I get a remote job in Cameroon after the training?
Okay, so let's dissect the two things. What is the duration of the training? It is until you're hired, which means in Cameroon, it might take you 2 years, 3 years, as opposed to, say, if you were in New York City, it would be less time because there is more opportunity. So it's until you're hired. And that's why we don't kick people out. And if you were in Cameroon, we'd give you more time in the live program because we cater especially. Now, I can tell you that Eddie Kem from my company who works for us lives in Bamenda, Cameroon. At one point, we also had someone else that actually lived in Cameroon as well. We also have Tyrone who works for us who's in Cameroon. And I have helped people in Africa get hired. I will tell you, it's much easier to get hired if you're in, say, South Africa than if you are in Cameroon. But, and here's the big but, Nigeria, Cameroon, and South Africa have an incredible amount of technology development. So the answer is, if you're great and you do all the work and you study, you should be able to get a remote job, but it won't be as quick as you'd like it to be. And more of these positions are becoming remote and remote. For example, the person that I mentioned earlier that just got a big job with 175 base, $55,000 a year in annual stock options, and I think it was a 30 or 35% bonus structure on top of that, it's fully remote. So there is that. But it is harder to get hired in Africa than it is in, say, the US or England or Germany. Just like me, if I go to my home in Greece, that's where I'm from. My family's from anyway. And if I stay in our village, in our house, there's less work in, Napatamos, Greece than there is in, say, Houston, Texas. But there's always opportunities for people that are great. So the key is for you is to become great. Focus on getting better every single day and never quit. I can also tell you we have people like Benedict, who was a student of ours that was living in Lagos, Nigeria, that's now living in Canada. And we've seen that happen a lot as well. So keep that in the back of your mind. There is opportunities. It is more challenging in some places than others. But if you're the best and you're really great, it is near impossible to hire an architect. You interview 1,000 people, and most of what you'll get is people that know the name of a service and how to configure it, but they can't solve architecture problems. So you should be okay.
Back to Taufik. Will you hire me
Okay.
after, let me see, will you hire me after the video training because I want to work in the USA or Canada?
Well, I don't know you, and I can't guarantee you're going to do the work. So how could I guarantee that I have how could I guarantee that I have the needs to hire additional people? Businesses don't hire people just because they want them. They have to have a need. So I don't know what my hiring needs will be a year from now when you have the skill. And I promise you this, no company can know what their business needs are a year from now. Interest rates go down, economy expands, inflation also occurs, and more businesses need to hire more people. Interest rates go up, unemployment rises, people have less money to spend, they spend less money to the companies, and the companies reduce their staff. So these are normal macroeconomic factors that go on. I don't know what the economy will be next year. I just don't. I don't know what my needs will be to know if I need you to be part of our team. But I hire a lot of people that have trained for us. I hired Chow. She's a rock star. Elonzo was my student. He came to us. He took a bunch of silly certifications, didn't know anything about architecture. We retrained him. We got Elonzo a job on the cloud. And I literally called Elonzo and I begged him to come. And I said, Elonzo, you're my friend. You're my buddy. We could be twins. We like each other so much. Please come work for us. Chris was my intern. Now, Chris also had been a general manager of multiple hotels and had a huge background in operations, but I hired him. Chow on this call, I hired. Eddie in Cameroon, I hired straight out of our training. Tyrone, I actually hired. But I also have people like David Lithicum on staff, who's an expert. I also have 2 PhD business school professors who teach in this program as well to make sure you have the business acumen. I have 3 MBAs that are in these programs teaching business acumen, and C-suite executives come in. I have tech executives that periodically come in and talk to people. So I don't know what my staffing needs will be a year from now, and I hope that makes sense.
Robert, I am trying to decide between the CCSK or the CCI. CCISP certification, but my ultimate goal is to be an EA, enterprise architect. I already have the Azure Security Architect Security certification. What would your advice be about my career?
So you want to be an enterprise architect, right? So can you come off mute where we can talk? If not, I'll just answer it.
Here I am.
Okay, so excellent question. So is the next job you want an enterprise architect job?
Well, actually, I really didn't know the scope of the enterprise until you explained it very well today. And that's from a vision of where I see love to be in the future. Yes, enterprise architects sounds more in line with what the business goal or my career goal.
And good. So here's what I want you to think about. If you wanted to be an airplane pilot, do you think it would be beneficial for you to get a law degree?
Not at all.
So, and here's the reason I say this. By the way, the CCSK, I would say don't ever waste your time with it on, but the CISSP is a great certification. But if you want to be an enterprise architect, and for my cloud architects, I almost exclusively recommend the CISSP, and I can tell you why in a minute. And I provide the training for the CISSP too.
Okay.
But if the enterprise architect is going to be the business executive, it would make more sense for you to get a TOGAF, which is an enterprise architecture certification. And if you wanted a second one, it could potentially be in an ITIL framework or a Zachman framework or something more related to enterprise architecture. So, but our formula is this. We do one cloud provider's professional. And admittedly, there is no architecture in a Google Professional Cloud Architect, an Azure Solutions Architect Expert, or an AWS Solutions Architect Professional. So why do we do it? It will get you an interview. And getting an interview is awesome. And then what we teach you, where the skills or knowledge, is what gets you hired. So there's that. So I would say if your goal was to be a cloud security architect or a cloud architect first, and then move into an enterprise architect role, the CISSP would be very helpful for you.
Okay.
But otherwise, I would say do the TOGAF 10, do one of the cloud providers things, and at some point later in your life, when you want to go from a $300,000 enterprise architect job to an $800,000 chief architect job, get an MBA.
That sounds good. Sounds real good. Only reason I thought of the security because originally I thought EA needs to have technical experience across all those domains, but you were explaining it's not even the hands of a technical.
Yeah.
The EA is not even the technical part of things. The business.
And let's talk. EA is not technical.
Okay.
It's very business. But let's talk about hands-on experience across all domains. You can't have it, no matter what you do. So what if I told you that I come from networking, right? And I'm a world-recognized expert, and I spent my entire 25 years in networking being a subject matter expert on either healthcare, and prior to that, it was actually the routing protocol called BGP, and it was another technology called IP multicast. Now, guess what? I was a subject matter expert at Cisco. Right next to me at Cisco, there was another person that had 20 years of wireless experience that knew nothing about routing and was an expert on wireless. Cisco then had experts in data center architecture working for them from just a network perspective. Then Cisco had people that were experts in video. Now, after about 100 years of experience, you could learn and master those four things. Now, application architecture, that's another career. Big data architecture is another career. So the key here is it's about building a team of experts, not you being able to do it. You're never going to know enough about anybody else's career. You have to be good at your job.
Makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome. And these are great questions, and that's why I'm going to take up me. I encourage you. This is the best career. It is absolutely wonderful. But, it's about getting the right training. If you spread yourself too thin, you're not going to get anywhere. And for everyone, the enterprise architecture job is a top of the food chain, executive position. So let's think of people that are at the top. I don't know if anybody's seen Simone Biles. She's like this little gymnast. She's the cutest thing. She's like a powerhouse. She smiles. She flips like 40 feet in the air. Her life is focused on being the world's best gymnast. There was a Jamaican runner. His name was Usain Bolt. He was the fastest man in the world. He was an expert in sprinting. He didn't play football. He didn't do marathon running. He became an expert in sprinting, and it's a special set of strengths. This is a specialty executive role, and the better you are at your job, the better you are and the more you'll earn. Nobody pays you to be an expert on someone else's job. And that's the biggest mistake I see people make in tech. They learn everybody else's job but their own.
From Milder, I may have missed it, but what is the difference between a solutions architect and an enterprise architect? Or let me rephrase that, trying to come up with a new question that makes sense. I may have missed it, but what is the difference between a solution architect, a cloud architect, and an enterprise architect? Or how do the organizations utilize these titles?
Okay. So organizations hire cloud architects and they hire enterprise architects. Vendors hire solutions architects. So let's talk about what a cloud architect is, a trusted advisor. Let's talk about what an enterprise architect is, a trusted advisor. Let's talk about what a solution architect is. It's a sales rep. So with technical ability. So if you work for AWS as a solution architect, you design, present, and sell AWS stuff. If you work at Azure as a solutions architect, you design, present, and sell Azure stuff. If you work at NVIDIA as a solutions architect, you design, present, and sell NVIDIA stuff. When you work at Cisco as a solutions architect, you design, present, and sell NVIDIA stuff. So the solutions architects are going to be these tech-enabled salespeople that know architecture that are going to consult to the cloud architects and the enterprise architects. Personally, I don't hire solutions architects for any reason, and here's the reason why. I need people that can see the entire scope of something. And if a solution architect comes to me from a vendor, they're getting paid to get me to buy something. So it's going to be harder to test them. So the solution architect designs, presents, and sells their stuff. So an AWS solutions architect is not going to design your Azure stuff, your Google stuff, just your AWS stuff. And they're going to sell it to you. A cloud architect is the reality of today's world. 98% of organizations need multi-cloud architects because 98% of organizations are multi-cloud. So the cloud architect focuses on the data centers plus all your cloud stuff. It's almost like an enterprise architect because they can't focus too deep on anything. So the cloud architect is that midpoint between the solutions architect and the enterprise architect. And for the most part, that's the way that would work. So the enterprise architect's at the top. So let me draw this over here. I'll go back to that diagram I drew a little earlier, and I think it'll help. And AWS has funny terms for cloud architects, but this is for the rest of the world. So if you have the C-suite at the top, the CEO sets the strategy for the organization, and they have their CFO, who's responsible for the organization's money, their chief operating officer that makes the business run or runs the business, the CIO that is the chief information officer, the chief tech architect. And typically underneath them, they will have the enterprise architect, and working for the enterprise architect will be the cloud architects, the network architects, the security architects, and the AI architects and more. Now, when the cloud architect wants to use something on AWS, they will call AWS and they will get an AWS solutions architect to provide some guidance to them. But the cloud architect has to know that the AWS solutions architect is biased to recommend AWS things. So, the cloud architect will reach out to a solution architect at AWS. They'll reach out to a solution architect from Azure, etc. So I hope that explained. So the danger of trying to prepare yourself for a solution architect role is as follows. You prepare yourself to be an AWS solutions architect, and there's really only one company that can hire you, AWS. Now, we train people to be cloud architects. Do they get hired as AWS solutions architects? All the time. Do they get hired as Azure solution architects? All the time. And I actually had a student that got a $409,000 solutions architect job at Google after our training. Because when you know the cloud, you can work for any of the vendors. But if you limit yourself to a vendor, it's like learning how to be an expert on a Toyota versus an expert on cars. Hope that makes sense.
Next question is from Rodney Graves. So I can become solutions architect associate with basically no tech experience. I've been building houses since the 90s.
Well, you asked two separate things. If you want to pass the AWS Solutions Architect Associate exam, with the right training, you can do it in less than 2 weeks. But that's passing a certification. That's not going to get you a job. Now, if you want to get hired, of course you can get hired as long as you train to be a cloud architect. Of course you can. Your background is absolutely irrelevant. It just doesn't matter. You know, Vladimir was a 24-year-old college student before he got hired by North Highland. It didn't matter. I'm pretty sure Rhea, before she got hired at NatWest, had no technology background whatsoever. Then again, Jawad was a cloud engineer, and we trained him and got him hired a year later at AWS as a solution architect. It doesn't matter your background. Here's what employers care about. Can you do the job? And can you do it well? The next thing they care about is, can they trust you? The next thing they care about is your energy, your enthusiasm, and your passion for the job. They look for people that are highly competitive because they don't want people that want to nap. They want people that want to fight to win. They look for people that go above and beyond. They look for good team players. They look for people that can ethically persuade and sell and communicate well. That's what they're looking for. You have that, you're getting hired. But finding that is really tough. I've interviewed 6,000 people in my career to try and hire them. You know who I hired? Less than 50 of them. Well, for first, 5,950 people lied to me. Either the resume was full of lies and they couldn't explain it to me, or I asked them a question and they answered it with a lie. Now, if they say, Mike, I've not had the opportunity to learn that yet, but I'm highly energetic, highly enthusiastic, and I love technology. I know what I know and I know what I don't know, and I can find the answers to things I don't know. If you want to check my competence, let's talk about X, Y, and Z. Well, I hire people. First hire I ever hired, his name was Shanur. I interviewed him for a network engineering job back at MCI WorldCom, now Verizon. I remember he walked into my office because I interviewed 6 people that day and they all lied to me. And then Shanur comes in and I asked Shanur a basic networking question. And he said, I'm sorry, I just don't know. I asked him another networking question. He said, Mike, I'm sorry, I don't know. The truth is, Mike, I really love tech and I'm so excited about networking and I'll give it my all and I'll do anything it takes to be great. If I had a chance. So I said, Shanur, what do you know? And he said, Windows NT. And I said, how do you know? And he said, I've been working for a family religious organization and helping. I'm like, all right, tell me about Windows NT. And he described it to me. And I went, you know what? I'm going to hire you. And I went to my manager, Devendra, and I said, Devendra, I'm going to hire Shanur. And my manager says, is he ready for the job? And I said, not at all. And my manager says, does he have any experience? And I said, absolutely zero. My manager said, why do you want to hire him? I said, I want to hire him because he's got the best attitude I've ever seen. I love his energy, and I know that if I hire him and I give him a little bit of training, he'll be awesome. Well, he worked there for almost 20 years. He became the CEO of a company and sells Chromebooks to developing nations at prices that people in developing nations can afford. I gave him the start. He was awesome. So, a lot goes into hiring decisions.
The next question is of Akshay Hopefully I pronounced your name correctly. Is this an entry-level friendly job for someone with no work experience? How likely is it to get hired for this position? Or should I shoot for a more junior position?
Okay, I'm going to make it very clear. There are no entry-level jobs in today's world. And if you train for an entry-level job, you will never be hired, or you'll be hired in years. It'll be far easier for me to get you a job like a solutions architect than it would to be a cloud admin or a help desk. And I'll explain to you why. Here is the criticality of it. Here's what entry-level people used to do. They would go to a router and type config t in 0/0/0 IP ADDR with an address, no shot. Router OSPF1 network 192.168.0.0.0.0.255.255 area 0. That was it. You told them what to do and they did it. I don't need that anymore. And why don't I need that anymore? Because I can have one DevOps engineer write a Terraform script and they can configure 1,000 routers in 5 minutes versus what those entry-level people did where I needed a team of 50. So I don't need them anymore. And you want to know even more? I can now use Claude 3.5 to write the Terraform script in 1 minute that I can then give to the DevOps engineer. So all those entry-level people I don't need. Now, what else did entry-level people? They would rack and stack servers in your personal data center. Well, AWS does that, or Azure, or Google. I probably don't need to rack and stack servers in the first place. Then I needed somebody to basically, set up the operating system, but I can do that stuff with Terraform too. So in the world of automation and cloud computing, all those entry-level roles are gone. We don't need them. And that's why I can get somebody a job as a cloud architect sooner than I can get someone there. Now, I'm going to be very fair. I hire people with no experience all the time. And many employers do. Now, if you want a job for a help desk, they want 5 years experience. Want to be a receptionist in a medical office, they want 5 years experience. Want to be a waiter, they want 5 years experience. They don't care about your experience. They care about your ability to do the job and do it well. So these were some people. So when I talked to Jennifer Emo, she was a mental health tech. But JP Morgan Chase sure didn't care when they hired her. They didn't care because he had no background. When we trained Delroy Batt, who worked on ambulances, CDW, which was a huge technology company, had no problem hiring him as a solution architect, even though he never worked in tech, because he was great. So Richard Ferrari, that fraud person I talked about, and there's just so many people, but these are the people that I really got to know personally, and I think about them, never worked in tech before MUFG hired him. So it was no big deal. Who pops in mind? The AWS folks, like the Ivan Tambo from Cameroon. He was working as a waiter before he got hired by AWS. What's his name? Daniel Bosa was selling shoes at Nordstrom before he got hired by JP Morgan Chase. Wallace Agana was a sales rep. And, when you start thinking about this, it's people are looking for things that are good that can do the job. So it takes about as much time for me to get you trained and hired as a solutions architect as it would to be a help desk person. I've never had an entry-level job. My first job was a senior engineer coming out of healthcare. Within 3 months, I was working at Wall Street, or 4 months, I'm sorry, as a senior architect. And within 2 years, I was a principal architect. So the key is you get hired if you have the right skills. And the old days of trying to learn somebody else's job and hope you learn, that just doesn't exist anymore. And what's worse is when you get that entry-level job, let's say you're help desk, nobody wants to move you out of help desk into a bigger role. You need to basically rebrand yourself so they don't see you as help desk. I had one job, and it was for a big global tech company. And here's what happened. I had been a principal architect in all my life. I hadn't been back to the US for like 6 months straight. And, I was in England one day and I bought a new Mac and my wife applied to Cisco for me. And I was in Reading, UK, and I got this call from this guy, Don at Cisco. And he says, hello, my name's Don. I see you've submitted an application to Cisco. And I went, I didn't submit an application to Cisco. What happened here? And I immediately said, uh-oh, my wife doesn't like me traveling. I've been in Dubai. I've been in Europe. I've been here. She probably filled out an application for Cisco. I go on the interview and I got hired for Cisco. And it was a job that was beneath me. It was a sales engineer job. But you know what? My wife wanted me to improve. Happy wife, happy life, unhappy wife, miserable life. So I took this job at Cisco. I was in the role as a sales engineer for about 3 months and I was bored out of my mind. It was more tech, less business. And I went to my manager, how do I move into one of these big roles? And he said, Mike, you can. I'm like, what do you mean I can? He was like, well, you're an engineer. You want to move into sales. You want to move into an executive role. You're going to have to be an engineer here forever, and we don't let you do it. So what did I do? I went home, swapped my golf shirts, which is me, for Armani and Canali suits. Started saying, honestly, let me build a team of people. I don't know how this thing works, but I'll build a team and we'll design it. I started doing sales calls, even though I wasn't supposed to, and started closing big deals. And, you know, the next thing I realize, I'm a lead enterprise architect because I basically carved this myself and I rebranded myself. I changed the way I walked. I changed the way I talked. I changed the way I discussed things. I got an executive coach. I got a business degree. And all of a sudden, nobody saw me as that sales engineer. And I spent the next decade at Cisco in executive architect roles. And I love Cisco. But the key is if you start in someone else's career, it's going to take a lot of work to get you into the new career. So plan for the career you want. Study for the career you want. And quite frankly, getting you a solutions architect job with the right training, if you do the work, is not hard, generally speaking.
Okay. From Abad, a basic question, Mike. Why do
Sure.
people use multi-cloud?
Why do people use multi-cloud? There's a lot of reasons. So here's the primary reason. A single cloud is a single point of failure. I'm going to say it again. A single cloud is a single point of failure. Somebody made a mistake at Google, a BGP error, and it took the entire Google cloud down for close to a day. AWS had an impaired network, and at one point they had a power failure, and their global systems were down. If you put your systems in the cloud, and it's all in a single cloud, when it fails, you are going to have problems. Put your single systems in AWS, for example, and AWS has a network outage where it affects the routing across their domains, a control plane outage, or they get hacked. The systems go down and people die. So nobody would ever, realistically speaking, in today's world, use a single cloud, and 98% don't. Here's the other reason. Each cloud is good at something else. You want a cloud that really has investments in AI? It's Azure. They've got the most investments in AI. You want to know a company that's got a lot of good big data stuff, and big data and AI usually go together? Google has a whole lot of big data experience. You want to go to a cloud that's got more infrastructure than you can possibly imagine, that's built on a build it and they will come approach? You go to AWS. So you're either doing it to create a high availability situation, you're either doing it to not avoid vendor lock-in and not put all your eggs in one basket. So when one provider raises your rates, you can say, give me a discount, or you cool, I'm out of here. I'm in Azure and I'll go to Google. Who cares? So it's that, or it's that maybe AWS has the best service here, and Azure has the best service here, and Google has the best service here, and Oracle's best for healthcare because they've got Cerner, which they purchase. So why not leverage the best of everybody? Do you think you would design a car on all parts that somebody makes? You get in a Mercedes. It's got some parts from Mercedes. It's got some parts from Bosch. It's got some parts for anything else. It's called best of breed. When you design a house, you may use appliances from 4 different companies. That's the reason you go multi-cloud, to get the best of the best and to reduce single points of failure.
The next question, Mike, is from Vincent. What is the difference between system design and enterprise architecture?
So system design has a lot of context. The enterprise architect designs systems, but system design can mean anything to a lot of people. There are most system designers are either technical architects or engineers that are doing the deep system design, that low level design where they're getting involved with things. And do you know what they focus on? Getting the tech to work. Now, I can make the tech work for anything, but does that mean it's the right tech decision? Does that mean it provides the right business value? And the answer is usually no. So you'll see people that teach system design, and they'll make this ridiculous LinkedIn post. Here's how you learn how to design systems. You look at what other people have done. Okay, so if I were to look at Netflix's system design, does that mean that I should use that same design for my streaming company? Is my business model the same as Netflix? Do I have the same recommendation engine as Netflix? Do I have the same subscriber base as Netflix? Are my business goals the same as Netflix? And if the answer is no, and it won't be because it's a different business, and you adopt Netflix's design, it's like putting a round peg in a square hole. And that's when your architectures fail. And that's why 70% of architectures fail. So architects do system design, but they do it from a business perspective. And architects are system designers, but sometimes people think of system design from an engineering perspective. Designing the system for the client's unique needs is what an enterprise architect does. So if I were to compare an enterprise architecture framework to a well-architected framework, let's talk about the difference. Let's say you take TOGAF. TOGAF makes you design systems for optimized business performance, meaning they get you to start at the executives, they get you to understand the business, they get you to understand the organization's data, the organization's technology, they get you to understand the organization's governance structure, they get you to understand the key players, and it talks about how you design a system to improve business performance. By comparison, you look at the AWS well-architected framework, which is how do you use AWS stuff in the AWS cloud. Now, there's no mention to optimizing business performance. There's no mention to business processes. There's no mention to building a business case, or it's all about here's from AWS how to deploy AWS stuff. So is that bad? Well, from an architecture perspective, it's not great. So what you typically do is you combine the frameworks. You use the TOGAF framework for your architecture, and then you look at the AWS well-architected framework for how you do your AWS stuff as part of your bigger architecture. So I hope you can kind of get that sort of makes sense. If not, please ask another one.
Hey, Mike, I think we got a new question from Malik. I watched a video you put up a while back on cloud architecture and how to get started. You gave a brief guideline that included getting a few certs. I know you say your program teaches you that information. Do people in your program still take those certifications or just learn information and focus more on getting the role?
So Malik, great question. In the videos I always talked about you not learning architecture and certifications, but I talked about using certifications for the following reasons: building your brand and helping you get an interview and showing you're willing to go above and beyond. So absolutely, we teach the AWS Solutions Architect Professional and the Azure Solutions Architect Expert. We teach for security, the CISSP, because that's the king of all security certifications at this point. And we teach the TOGAF 10. So we do provide the training for these. Now I'm going to make it very clear. Our program is now over 800 hours. 700 hours of it is not certification related. It's related to turning you into an awesome architect. But there's probably about 100 hours of certification materials in there to help you pass the certification. I will have you pass the certification to get the interviews, but you can have every certification under the sun, moon, and stars and never get hired. So we teach both. We teach you how to be a great architect, but we always recommend the certifications last. The certification should be the last component of your preparation, and here's the reason why. You can be like Delroy Bad, who didn't have a single certification in the world and still got hired as a cloud security architect. And you can be an architect, you can have 18 million certifications and never get hired. So why do I care? Why do I say this? When you understand the technology, these certifications are nothing. For an example, about 4 years ago, the only cloud I never worked on was the Google Cloud. So I made a bet with a buddy that said I could pass the Google Professional Cloud Architect program with less than 2 days preparation. He laughed at me. I bought the Cybex book, and 2 days later, I passed the Google Professional Cloud Architect exam. It was nothing because I knew cloud. So when you have the knowledge, you can pass these certifications like nothing. The next thing we talk about is the next thing that's pretty critical is as follows. If you have the skills, you can still get hired. So if you get certified first, you'll go on a bunch of interviews and no one will hire you. But if you have the skills, the certifications become easier. So let's make it clear. The average architect earns $1,000 a day. So if you waste 9 months upfront getting certified, you're still going to need about 8 months of training afterwards. So you wasted 9 months of your time, and at $20,000 for the average architect salary per month, that means you lost $180,000. By comparison, if you learn the architect job first and then spend a month or two doing your certifications, you got hired 6 months earlier. So learn the job and then pass the certifications. The certifications are really like wrapping paper on a gift. If I gave my wife a box and it had beautiful wrapping paper with a bow and it was an empty box, I'm sleeping outside in the shed with the cat. I love my cat and I love it outside, but I don't want to be sleeping outside with the cat. And by comparison, if my wife likes Manolo Blahnik shoes and I buy her Manolo Blahnik shoes, even if they're not in a box, she's going to be excited. She loves them. She'll be happy. Now, if I go to Saks, buy those Manolo Blahnik shoes, and they put it in a beautiful thing with a wrapping paper, she's going to like it even more. And that's why we do what we do.
Next question. Leek is asking, does your program offer any discounts or fee waivers for any of these certifications?
No, these certifications are from the vendors themselves. We have anything to do with them. Our concern and our focus and every dime we spend, which basically we offer these programs almost at our cost, is getting you hired. I have 3 MBAs in this program. I have 2 PhD business schools professors teaching in this program. I have people that have been chief technology officers and CEOs teaching in this program. I have application architects teaching in this program, network architects teaching in this program, working cloud architects teaching in this program, enterprise architects teaching in this program, and it takes a lot to make this run. I personally don't even care if you get the certifications because, quite frankly, I just care that you have the skills to get hired, and many people have been hired. Jeffrey West got hired with nothing, or maybe a cloud practitioner, but he had the right skills. Delroy Batt had no certifications. You should have seen the security architect job Bob Welsh got. The only certification he had was a cloud practitioner. So I am concerned about making you great architects.
And our last question for the moment will be from Aaliyah. Does this program help communicate the cloud skills with LinkedIn and resume optimization?
So, yes, absolutely. We teach you how to negotiate. We teach you how to make your LinkedIn profile. We teach you how to sell a cloud solution or an enterprise architecture solution. We have to. If we didn't, it wouldn't be an architecture certification. So absolutely.
Let's see what else we have, Mike. Akshay Raz is asking a question. What is the time/work commitment for the course? And can you elaborate on you stay in the program until you get hired? Will we be charged for our time after the program ends until we get a job? Thank you in advance.
Okay, so to make it clear, you stay in the program until you are hired. That means if it takes you 3 years to finish the program, you stay in the program for 3 years. There's no, and not that you need 3 years, you don't, but there's no extra charges. Well, that wouldn't be fair or appropriate. You buy the course, you take the course, and you stay in the course until you're done. And here's why I do that. Chow may be able to read 1,000 pages a day, and I promise you, Chow's mathematics skills, not that we do mathematics, is going to be incredible. But, that's Chow. I had one student that had to go home to Ethiopia for 9 months to take care of a sick family member. It wouldn't be fair to charge her more because she came back and lost 9 months. So, no, we give you a year in the live classes. If you want to extend the live classes beyond that, then, potentially there's a small fee if we were to charge it. But, whether you attend the live classes or not after the year, you're still in our program, which means after the 1 year, the 3 classes we teach per week, they still get added to your training and you get to review these classes. We do new architecture projects and you get access to it. We update the training content. Like I just made 105 new cloud architecture videos to go in our programs. And Mark has created so far 37 new networking videos to go create in this program. We'll add that. And if you've been with us for 2 years, that'll still be added to your training because we want you to get better and we want you to go back to this. So this is just us providing our way of saying, look, life happens. Mike can read 1,000 pages a day and remember them, and that's true. But maybe Elonzo can read 500 pages a day and remember it, but Elonzo's better at marketing and this and that and the other thing. So why should Elonzo and I have to learn? Elonzo's strengths and our strengths are slightly different. They're pretty similar between me and Elonzo. We could be twins. I'm literally not joking. But after all of that, everybody's different. So you stay in until you're hired. Now, what does that mean? It means if you've got more time, you get through quicker. If you've got less time, you get through slower. Meaning somebody can, I've got one student right now is a young 16-year-old. The guy's a fireball. I've got him doing 40 hours a week of additional projects over the summer because he's got the time. By the time he's 18, he'll have an incredible cloud architect job because he's just not going to get, a $200,000 architect job at 16 years old. They're going to want him to be 18 first. But, keep that in the back of your mind. I also have 80% of my people that work full time. Sometimes you can't work as much when you're full time. So we don't care. And I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I think we also underscore that we are so much not like a boot camp.
No,
Or
no.
I think I've been a part of many over the years, learning different things, and I don't think it's fair for someone to sit you down in front of a fire hydrant, open up the cap, and hopefully you get a drink in while the water's shoving, is rushing towards your face. And then ultimately they shut the valve off. We hope you get a drink, but we gotta move you over so we can let someone else have the same experience. That's not been what I've had. That's not the experience of others. We want you all to be, we want you all to have a career. Okay. We're not here for certifications because certifications do not guarantee a job. It just says, quite honestly, I know how to pass a test based off of this subject matter. However, getting the competency or the certifications is what we excel at. And we continue to do so until you call us, email us, phone call, give us a phone call and say, I got hired. And we always emphasize that going to a bank with an offer letter, an offer letter over a certification is going to get you that financial backing instead of saying, I just passed a specific test with subject matter. So we want you all to get hired, and we're willing to put in the work and the time for that to happen until you get said offer letter. So we encourage you all to sign up with us. We want you all to be successful because there are far more enterprise architect, solution architect positions than there are people. And the value of that position is echoed in the salary. And that's how much we need competent, capable solution architects to do so. And you can see how valuable that market is. It's not saturated, not by a long shot. And that's how valuable that position is for any technological environment. Okay, Mike from Shite. Enterprise architecture is 80 to 100% business. Then any ERP expert can be an EA or what we need anything more than
So
that.
enterprise resource planning tools are a tool. You're not going to be an architect because you're an expert with a hammer. And an enterprise resource planning tool is just one of the many tools, one of the hundreds or thousands of tools that are going to go into being an enterprise architect. And ERP is just one tool for business, just one, more specifically for things like a supply chain example. That will be nowhere close to enough to be there. Everything we talked about, network design skills, security design skills, AI design skills, data center design skills, the knowledge to understand business processes and re-architect processes, the ability to manage stakeholders, that's architect skills. You can't convince or try to take one tool and think that's going to make you an architect. It's one tool that's designed to improve business, but it may not based upon how it's designed. So I hope that kind of clarifies that.
I believe we definitely emphasize what Malik was asking after we were hired. Do we lose access to all the materials? Everything outside of live instructions, we definitely you will not have that. You have, just to clarify and emphasize again, your asynchronous video training, your assignments, your case studies, all of that material you have for a lifetime. You will have a full year of live content on our classes that we have on a weekly basis outside of any American holidays for you to become competent and a capable enterprise architect. And perhaps maybe a nominal fee after that 13th month and so on. But normally all of our students get hired way before then. So I just wanted to emphasize that again, you have a wonderful Slack community where you're able to work with other students from a global perspective, a local perspective. We give everyone opportunity to have access to enterprise architects, industry standards. The enterprise architect, you actually have training for the TOGAF, which is a prominent enterprise or architectural framework that is very popular amongst lots of industries. And they even have a tiered membership for said organizations, such as the IBM, consulting firms and banking firms and so forth. So you're going to be able to get that training encapsulated within your overall development training as well. So the things that we see and the things that, I mean, I've been working on tech and trying to hone my craft since the days of the Linux Academy before they were bought and deprecated and so on and so forth. And being able to find this resource in Mike and Go Cloud Careers was a total boon for me. And trying to navigate the technological wilderness that I would call it to understand what do I need to learn? What is my trajectory? What certifications will afford me these opportunities? And what I learned here, just it was a fraction. I learned 3 times as much in a third of the time. And I was able to communicate the effectiveness of technology and what it is, what it does, when we would use it. And it goes far beyond being able to define what is an S3, what is an EC2, what is a WAF Advanced, guard duty, and so on and so forth. That's only a facet of what's in AWS, but not the cloud as a whole. So you will definitely have your eyes open. You will be enriched. You'll have such a tremendous experience of working with people around the world who are focused, supportive, and helpful for you to learn what everyone has been learning on a continuous basis. And I have yet to see anyone do the same thing that we're doing here. So we encourage everyone to participate. You will be pleased. So getting back to the questions, Mike, from Fu. Mike, I wish to ask, is the duration of the program with respect to the industry's background, or how fast should you study based on your IQ?
Well, there's so many things that go into this. So it's not your IQ. Your IQ is related to your intelligence and how quickly you learn. That is a component of it. But let's say you've got an IQ of 160, like my wife. Actually, it's like she's got an IQ of 166. She also has a great EQ, or emotional intelligence. But if she didn't have that emotional intelligence, and she couldn't figure out how to give a good presentation, and she couldn't figure out how to sell, and she couldn't figure out how to lead a team, it might take her a year to learn with that, even if she has one of the highest IQs in the world. She doesn't. She's an expert communicator, but that's the point. So, your IQ is part of it. Your level of soft skills is part of it. And, I've got some people that have been engineers for a while, but they're afraid to speak. They get tongue-tied. They may take 2 years to get their presentation skills up and running. We don't care. We get them stay because we want them to be great. But now let's talk about the macroeconomic factors that are out there. In a good economy, if you're not really ready, employers will hire you anyway. In a rough economy, they're going to be more selective. Now, let's talk about your geography. If I go to my village in Greece in Nepetamos, there's 10,000 people there. Guess what? There's an American supermarket that employs 50 people in the center of town. They call it the American supermarket. They're not going to need an architect. And to get myself a job in Greece will take longer than if I wanted to get myself a job in Dallas, Texas. So all these things go into it. All these things go into it. And I want to keep that in the back of your mind. So keep that there. So normally speaking, it takes about 8 to 12 months from the time someone joins us to the time they get hired. It's about average. But, what was his name? Richard Afukar, who came to us and 3 weeks later was hired by AWS. Joe Millen came to me from a strong networking background, and he was hired in 3 weeks by AWS as a senior solutions architect. But he had it. He'd already been there. He'd already done some of these things. By comparison, I had Robert Welch. Robert Welch is a rock star with regards to knowledge. But it took me about 1 year and 3 months to get his presentation skills up to snuff before he went on that interview and they hired him. So it's really not your background. It's a combination. Now let's talk about the time you have. If you have nothing else going on in your life and you can lock yourself in a room and study for 10 hours a day, you're going to get done faster. But maybe you get a headache after 2 hours of studying and can't do anything for the rest of the day. I did my Cisco Certified Internet Expert in 6 months from the time I decided networking would be cool. I read 1,000 pages a day. I'm not joking. I spent $40,000 on doing it, and I studied 70 plus hours a week in addition to my full-time job. I did it. I know other people that are smarter than me that have spent 5 years working on a CCIA that failed the lab 4 different times because they panicked when they got into the ridiculous situations. So 8 to 12 months is normal, but the reason we let you stay in until you're hired is we know that not everybody read the same textbook on what time to wake up each day, which foods to eat, exactly how to give a presentation. So we want to make sure that you get a good outcome when you leave. That's the key.
From Saeed. Hi, I'm a senior cloud engineer with AWS senior cloud engineer in my organization with 5 years of experience. Can I still become an enterprise architect, or do I need a few more years of experience with technical aspects to become an enterprise architect? Thanks.
Can you come off mute, Saeed? So I'm going to, if not, I'll answer it very simply. You have years of experience in engineering, which is a completely different job. So I'm going to ask you this question. You've spent 10 years as an attorney. Now, do you think that's going to teach you how to be a physician? So if I tell you Jermaine Houston was selling landscaping gear before we trained him, and a year later he worked as an enterprise architect, I can tell you Wallace Agana was a sales rep, but JP Morgan Chase hired him as an enterprise architect. It has nothing to do with your level of engineering experience. I was a nurse before I decided to learn to practice medicine. Do you think anybody allowed me to practice medicine, or I had to go to school to learn medicine? It's a different job. So some people have become enterprise architects out of engineering, like Pritipal Sejan. We trained him and got him an enterprise architect job. He was an engineer. I can tell you Angelo Munoz was also an application architect, and we trained him to be an enterprise architect, going from applications to enterprise. But I can give you examples of people that have never worked in tech that got their first enterprise architect job. So that has nothing to do with your background. What you ate for dinner yesterday does not determine your heart health 20 years from now. What you do for the next 20 years, your diet, your exercise determines where you're at. I went from practicing medicine to principal architect in less than 2 years. Why? Because I studied and learned how to be an architect. I never had a help desk job. I never had a sysadmin job. I even never had a regular engineering job. The WorldCom had network engineers 1 through 4. 4 was the most senior. I got hired as a network engineer, and within 3 months, I was the lead architect. And within 4 months, I was working on Wall Street as a senior architect. Not your background, it's your competency. So, of course, with the right training, you'll be an enterprise architect, but you can go work as an engineer for the next 50 years, and it's not going to teach you anything about enterprise architecture. It's going to teach you how to be an engineer. And I wish it was the case. I wish I could be an Uber driver for 5 years and then get hired on the Formula 500 racing, where they do drag racing, or NASCAR, where they drive at like 200 miles an hour. It's a different job. You don't learn somebody else's job by doing somebody else's job. And that's why Olympic gymnasts don't do marathon running and hope it's going to help them, jump higher. It's a different skill. And that's sadly the biggest problem in tech, is everybody focuses so hard on somebody else's job that they don't get to theirs. So I hope I answered your question there, Saeed.
Well, I think this concludes the rest of our questions, Mike. We really want to thank you for sharing your expertise, sharing what you've learned, sharing what you've given us, the staff, directly, and how we became great cloud architects with the experience. And we hope everyone has an opportunity to participate with us. We do have that discount. We have use webinar 35 on our website for the enterprise architect position. We really hope you join us. I think you will have a rewarding and fulfilling experience to become what you look for. Take a look at Glassdoor, pull up enterprise architect, and you will be very impressed and incentivized to become an enterprise architect. And we look forward to having you with us. Mike?
And also remember that an enterprise architect could also be called a chief information officer, a chief architect, or a CTO. They are all enterprise architecture roles as a rule. So I got to meet some of you today. I wish more of you came on screen and we had more of a face-to-face conversation. For those of you who did, great. For those of you who asked questions in the chat box, it was still nice to meet you. And I wish you all a wonderful career. Robert asked, how long is the discount good for? The next 24 hours, it should be. Typically speaking, when my team makes them. But I've enjoyed meeting you all. I love being an enterprise architect. I realistically speaking only know two careers. I know how to practice internal medicine and I know how to be an architect. And I got to tell you, it's the best job I've ever had. And I absolutely love it. And I know you will love it too. Thank you all for attending today. And it was so nice to meet all of you.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. We will see you next time.